Hello everyone, I'm Quacksilver, and I am so excited to be taking you through the Haiku the Robot Any % tutorial. The way this is going to go is we've got 3 parts to the tutorial here. First, I'm going to cover every single room in a very basic sort of techless speedrun, designed to be getting you from your casual playthrough into a speedrun, into your first speedrun of the game. Then I'm going to do a full run of the game using only the route I laid out in the first part. And then, after that full run, I'll go over some more advanced speed tech, some intermediate strats, and generally ways that you might develop your speedrun if you were looking to push for better times. I make no assumptions anywhere in this guide about your time goals or your previous speedrun experience. I firmly believe that Haiku is a great first speed game, and certainly a great first Metroidvania speed game. So whether you are coming with decades of experience or literally none, I hope you will find something here that is useful to you. I said there is no tech. There is a little bit of minimal, shall we say, mechanics exploitation in this first part of the guide. In every case, that is either stuff that is absolutely integral to the function of the speedrun, or things that I have checked in with other new runners to this game that is generally believed to be easy enough to do on your literal first pass, because that's the standard that we're setting here. My goal with this is just to build an approachable, repeatable foundation to any % that can be expanded on with a variety of tech later to your comfort and choosing. So before we begin, I want to talk about sort of basic speedrun nonsense. That's patch, controls, loadouts, practice, all that fun stuff. Haiku the Robot can be played on either keyboard or controller, and basically there's no difference to any of them. I play on Switch Pro Controller using the D-pad, which is broadly in speedrunning considered to be the worst control scheme before you get to things like Guitar Hero controllers and DK bongos, so trust me, I can experientially back that you can play with anything. For those of you that are a little bit more technically minded, if you play on keyboard, the leaderboards for Haiku do allow an SOCD cleaner to mimic controller behavior on keyboard. If you don't know what that is, it does not matter. It doesn't really come up in this game very much at all. As far as keybinds go in Haiku, generally, whatever is comfortable for you is going to be best. However, there are a couple of things that I do recommend, and that's making sure that you have your roll button on a button that you can press often and in quick succession after jump and dash. So if you're looking at my controls, because it's Proton, they're backwards from how most other controllers work. But I have jump on B, which is your A analog if you use a normal controller, and then dash on right trigger and roll on right bumper, so that I can very easily segue between any combination, any 2 out of the 3 of those. Because that comes up a fair bit in the run. While Haiku has been released for multiple platforms, runs are conventionally done on PC. There are 3 major reasons for that. The first reason is that there is an entire class of speedrun that is inaccessible to Switch players because it requires down patching. If you look at the Haiku speedrun.com leaderboards, you will see the most popular and well-tread category is any % base game, in which runners down patch through Steam Beta to patch 1.0.265. It happened to be the fastest patch in the game because a number of things that I'll talk about later, and because the dev for this game, Mr. Morris, is an absolutely wonderful individual who deserves all the love and support in the world. He made it publicly accessible when patching the game further. There are a number of changes between base game and obscure information, which is the current patch of the game, version 1152. Notably, there are a number of changes to bosses and a number of changes to some basic speed tech. This part of the guide will be purely patch agnostic. I will not be discussing anything that you have to be on one patch or the other in order to understand. There will be some later speed tech that is patch specific, as well as some of the bosses in the run were just changed between patches, and I will always identify what those changes are when we get to the relevant section in the guide. The second reason that playing on PC is generally preferred to Switch is that you get access to a loadless timer. In PC games, we generally make it so that load times do not affect your actual gameplay because that's not skill testing in speedrunning, and unfortunately for Switch, runs will be timed RTA. If you are coming from other Metroidvanias, I can say with confidence that the load times in Haiku are nothing compared to some other games. Shoutouts to Hollow Knight. But it is about 15 to 20 seconds in a 20-minute run, so if you are looking for very top-end leaderboard times, it is a competitive disadvantage. On the leaderboards, the real-time attack is also displayed, so if you're running on Switch, you will be able to compare fairly with other runners, but the boards are sorted by loadless time first. The third, and arguably most important reason to run on PC is access to practice tools. There are a couple of practice tools and other general sort of like file edit things. For starters, there's a speedrunner config file that Mr. Morris has included in the game that can be used to change some things like pogo sensitivity, as well as how analog versus D-pad behaves on controller. When I first started playing Haiku, both keyboard and controller were broken in different ways, and the fixes that were pushed were directed specifically at speedrunners. So they're settings files in your Haiku the Robot save on your computer that is inaccessible to Switch. But far more important than any of that is access to this debug mod. You can see on my screen here that I have a Haiku modding API, as well as the cursor unlock mod and debug mod here. Debug mod is really robust for a game of this size, featuring save states, ability and chip unlocks, the ability to make yourself invulnerable, the ability to make yourself have infinite heat. It's a hugely useful practice tool, and if you want to put time into Haiku, I highly recommend getting it. If you join the Haiku Discord, there will be links to all of that stuff and a ton of people willing to help you get it set up. There are also several other cosmetic and entertaining mods, like Haiku's Randomizer, a palette swapper mod, and just some other fun stuff if you want to play around more in this game. That said, before we get into it, one last thing that I want to talk about is in-run safety, sort of generally up front. I maintain, I said before, I will probably say again, Haiku is a great first speed game. However, this run in a large part relies on intentional damage and intentional death, and that's because in this game, quitouts do not actually save your progress. So if I were to do a very simple example of this, if I were to go and kill an enemy here, I have 9 scrap now instead of 6. If I were to quit out, that progress will be entirely reset. Now with scrap, that's not usually an issue, but with things like item pickups or boss kills, that could be much more problematic. And what that means is that deathwarping is our form of fast travel in this movement. This is also a game where healing costs money and dying drops money, so as much as it pains me to say this, the best way to recover from a bad situation in this game is to never get into one in the first place. However, I will be pointing out a couple of safeties throughout the run. They will more often take the form of just extra scrap, extra money that you can gather, because safety save points drastically alter the nature of the run for the worse, because deathwarping requires that you have a specific save point to die back to. There will still be some safeties, but they are the first ones that I recommend you cut if you're interested in pushing this down a little bit further, because of how much they edit the route. All of that out of the way, let's get into it, and by into it, I mean let's talk about how all of the game mechanics work. It's time to get nerdy. So, in Haiku the Robot, so much of your movement and everything else is gated by the central mechanic of the game, and that is Haiku's heat up here in the top left corner. You can see it's got 3 visual bars, but there are actually 4 sections to it because there is the blue segment of the gauge, the yellow, the red, and overheated. Many actions, including jumping, slashing, morphing, and unmorphing, do not consume heat and can also be done regardless of whether or not Haiku is overheated. Some actions, including sliding and grappling, as well as Haiku's blink, will cost 1 full gauge of heat, and obviously can't be done while Haiku is overheated. There's our blink. And the special case is your bombs, which actually cost 2 heat in total. So they will bring me from mid-yellow all the way to overheated. Wait to cool down for a second here. That's bombs. I think a useful frame of reference for Haiku's heat gauge is to think of it as a scale from 0 to 100, where 33 is the top of blue, 66 the top of yellow, and 99 the top of red, which is very important because the distinction between top of red and overheated is much, much narrower than any other segment of the gauge. So from absolutely 0 heat on our helpful infinite horizontal plane here with nothing else going on, it means that you can actually dash or blink. I wasn't fully unoverheated there. Let me actually go ahead and remove my blink. It means you can actually dash 4 times from unoverheated to get 3 to the top of red and then 1 more to overheat, and that 4th dash will effectively cost 3% as much heat as the others. So let me unoverheat a little bit here. So from absolutely nothing, you can see the 4th dash cost effectively no heat at all. Also, because you unoverheat as soon as your gauge touches yellow, that means from, again, on our infinite horizontal plane, the fastest sort of movement, if you have no other abilities, is to overheat as fast as you possibly can, and then double dash as soon as you unoverheat. Because you get effectively 2 dashes for the price of 1. Obviously, in the course of a full run context, that will never be that simple, but generally, something you want to get in the habit of doing is figuring out how to overheat Haiku with the movement you have available. There are a number of things also that fully refresh Haiku's heat instantly. The most important, obviously, is going to be taking a save point. But some others also include picking up any major abilities, picking up a power cell, or dying if you died in a room that wasn't hot. Healing is also a little bit of a special case here, which is to say, when you heal by default, it does increment your heat a little bit. However, if you are fully overheated, not only can you still heal, unlike most other movement abilities, but it actually does not impact your cooling down at all, which practically means that, as in movement, generally the best time to heal, if you need to, mid-run, is while you're overheated, because it doesn't otherwise impact your ability to use heat for movement. As mentioned before, healing costs money in this game. Specifically, healing costs 9 scrap in total. When you start to heal, Haiku plants his feet, so he's unable to move, and starts cranking his wrench in this cute little animation here. And the first crank of the wrench just serves to confirm that you're healing. It does not actually do anything. You'll notice my scrap didn't go down, I didn't actually start to heal, I didn't gain heat. Every subsequent crank after that will drain you for 3 scrap each, take a little bit of heat, and you'll be able to see on my UI that it visually heals a partial health. Until it's full and you get that little pop SFX. It is possible to stop healing with part of a capsule recovered. So I can stop here, in which case it'll visually persist for a little bit, but will eventually fade on its own, and you will simply lose the benefit that you had. That also, the partial heal will disappear instantly if you take damage. So if you start to heal and are damaged mid-healing process, you have just wasted your scrap, unfortunately. Something else that's worth noting is right now I have 8 scrap. If you have less than 9 but more than 2 scrap and you go to heal, it will still drain the partial ticks of your heal. And so even though I can't actually heal here, it will drain all the way until it can drain no more, and then you will simply be unable to heal and unable to heal further with no scrap. However, an interesting quirk of this that will come up later is that you can start the healing animation when you don't have enough scrap to heal at all. You can also start the healing animation when you're at full HP. So I'm gonna save here. You can still start the healing animation at full. While you are healing in an unhealable state like this, you can stay in this animation forever. It does not drain scrap. It does not impact your heat. That will become important when it comes to some advanced tech, but for right now, it's just a fun quirk of the system. Last note before we actually begin the route of the run, and that's that combat in this game is fairly straightforward, but there are 2 major things that you need to know that will apply to every bit of combat in every run on every patch. And the first of those is that Haiku's upslash is just faster than the side slashing. So whenever possible, you want to be upslashing enemies and bosses. That pogo is also faster than side slashing, but generally there are fewer opportunities to pogo in combat than upslashing. So upslashing is your friend, and upslashing while walking is also your friend. The second thing is that bosses can only die when they have fully completed their attacks. So there is a little bit of a stepwise notion to how combat against bosses in this game work, because whether you kill a boss at the start of an attack it throws at you or the end of an attack it throws at you makes literally no difference. It will only die as soon as the full attack is completed. That's also true for phase shifting in boss fights. However, since you can overdamage phases, it's less impactful. But for bosses with particularly long attacks, oftentimes combat in this game is going to come down to how can we do as much damage as possible to kill them before they even start the long attack, because if you're even 1 hit slow, it means that you have to sit through the entire attack. That is basically the entire sort of general mechanics, nerding out stuff. It will apply broadly to any part of the run, any patch. With that, at long last, we can get into the actual run itself. So, without further ado, I'm going to get started here. Right away, you'll notice that I'm playing on debug mod, and so the intro is actually going to be much shorter. There's a little cutscene you have to skip, you have to sit through at the beginning here that we don't have to in debug mod, but it's worth noting that time for speedruns doesn't start until Haiku has control. So it's just an opportunity to reset your mental after losing the prior run. So as soon as the run starts, we're going to take our little break animation. We're going to break these little barriers, slide through the one-way gate, and then immediately die. Welcome to Haiku the Robot. Death warping is very powerful. Your first save point is actually a decent chunk ahead of where you start the game, so it is faster by a couple of seconds to death warp out here rather than walk the long way around. From here, we're going to go to the end of the room, and then head over here to the first major skip of the run. It's time to talk about coyote frames. So in most platformers, you have a grace period when you walk off of a ledge where you can start a jump from technically mid-air to sort of as a game feel thing. It's named coyote frames because it's named after Wile E. Coyote, who would often, you know, walk out into mid-air, realize that he was airborne, and only then fall. It's a very common feature in many platforms. However, in Haiku the Robot, they are particularly generous because it does not really matter how you become airborne. So for instance, even after you slide, you can still jump from a decent chunk, a decent ways into midair. Wile E. Coyote would truly be proud. And that's very important because this first key is supposed to be, in classic Metroidvania fashion, something that you sort of circle around the entire first area of the map to come grab, and then finally use it to actually get progress. But with slide jumping out of coyote frames, you can make it up here much earlier than anticipated. You have, functionally, as many tries as you want on this when you're starting out. You're not under any threat, and it takes a solid minute to actually walk around, so you can sit and throw yourself at this trick for a while and still be saving time. With that, we've got our rusted key, and we're going to navigate down beyond these enemies. That one there is the only one-hit enemy, so if you're starting to grab safety scrap, that's probably important. And pick up the wrench. In case you are anxious, because the wrench is an optional pickup, and there is, in fact, an achievement for completing this game without the wrench, know that for the speedrun, even safety aside, even at the top level of speedrunning, grabbing wrench is optimal, so you're not losing out on anything by picking it up. If you are going for the wrenchless achievement, however, good luck, and this route will still apply, you just don't grab the wrench. Don't accidentally grab the wrench. Moving on from the wrench, I'm going to slide our way past these tire enemies, use the rusted key here, generally navigate down and around this large room through the first save point. This is a save point we're going to be skipping because we will want to Deathwarp back to the first save point later. And in this long room, you want to generally thread your way around the tire enemies. And however you get up to this, generally the goal is to beat these flying enemies because they will almost always cycle from right to left towards this door, and then body blocking you, especially if you're overheated, is a little bit of a problem. Between these two routes, going this way and then going up here, not a whole lot of difference when you're starting out. And with that, we can talk about Garbage Magnet. So, I'm gonna heal up here. Garbage Magnet is a very straightforward boss fight. In Phase 1, Garbage Magnet, who you have to actually slash at to initiate the fight, by the way. In Phase 1, Garbage Magnet will always alternate between a slam attack, like so, and a sweep attack, where it sweeps across from one side of the arena to the other, and it'll just sort of keep doing this forever. The oil that drops from the ceiling is completely random, so you do have to mind where you are positioning yourself, but other than that, this first phase is fairly straightforward. Just pile on the damage, and again, make sure that generally you are up slashing or pogoing rather than side slashing. Oh, actually, something I will pull out now is our handy debug stats here. In debug mod, you can see a list of a lot of stats, including your completion percentage, all of the counts of things that contribute your completion percentage, your current attack damage, which only matters for obscure information gameplay, but also for a number of important bosses in the run. Not all of them, unfortunately. We're still working on it, but for a number of important bosses in the run, you can see their current HP. With one exception, every boss is going to phase shift at exactly half of its current HP total. So Garbage Magnet will phase shift at 65 out of 130 HP. So with that, I'm gonna take the fight again. You saw, because that was at the end of an attack animation there, as soon as the HP hit 64, it phased. That's generally what you are aiming for. If Garbage Magnet does one more attack there, that's fine, but you can see... let me reload the save here. I'm going to go generally a little bit slower in this. So here, you won't phase shift until the attack is fully completed. Then, phase 2 of Garbage Magnet changes a little bit. He's always going to start with either a triple slam attack like so, and if he does a triple slam, he will always follow it up with a sweep. And the second attack he gains access to is this magnet pull attack, where pillars come up at consistent locations in the ground, and you just have to dodge between them. And you can keep piling on damage while you do so. That's Garbage Magnet. A very straightforward tutorial boss. I will say, there is one unfortunate quirk of Garbage Magnet that is hard to get deliberately, but I will mention it just in case. It happens more often on base game runs, but it is very possible on either patch of the game. With the phase shift of Garbage Magnet, ideally Garbage Magnet is phase shifting in the left corner, right? If you do the last hit of damage to phase shift Garbage Magnet right as it starts its next attack here, the boss will bug out and will try to do both of its phase 2 attacks at the same time, meaning it is incredibly mobile. There is stuff flying all over the ceiling, and while it's not like invulnerable or anything, and it's possible to finish the fight in that state, it usually means you're going to die. It's not something that you can necessarily avoid, it's just something to know that happens occasionally. So when Garbage Magnet dies, it drops a frustratingly random amount of scrap. Each individual piece of scrap that the boss drops is randomized between values of potential scrap. So I have seen as low as like 45 scrap drop from this boss, and as high as 120 scrap drop from this boss. There's a reason why scrap in this route is mostly only used to heal. So this scrap that the boss drops is pure safety. You can get it if you feel like you're going to need some health in the upcoming split, but it is entirely skippable otherwise. Also, don't heal after the boss, because we're going to come right through this hallway and pick up Magnet, which is going to full heal Haiku. So there's our electromagnetism. It's Magnet, it's wall jump, and we're immediately going to backtrack the way we came. And in this room, we're going to once again avoid the save point, so we don't have to take a walk back, and here we're just going to intentionally die. Deathwarp number 2. So you'll note there that on dying, I lose a little bit less than half of my scrap, which is why it can be frustrating if Garbage Magnet only drops like 20 scrap or something truly abysmal, because then you don't have much to work with. We're, from here, going to head back up sort of the way we came, the way we should have come, because to my left there is the tunnel where Haiku started, but we're going to go right here. And pick up this chip. This is Infinity Edge. Infinity Edge is basically the only damage chip that is going to matter for this run. It's the only chip that affects combat that we're going to pick up in any percent. As you can see here, it sharpens the user's sword, granting them a 10% chance to deal critical damage to opponents. What this means is that when you strike enemies, you have a 1 in 8 chance to do critical damage, which is double. Yes, the tooltip lies to you. It's been that way forever, and I think it's hilarious. It is also thankfully lying to you in a way that is kinder, sort of in the style of those old Fire Emblem games that lie to you about hit chance to feel more fair. But it is, legally speaking, 10% is 1 in 8 in Arcadia. So, once we get out, once we pick up Infinity Edge, we're gonna climb up this pillar room, pass by Rusty, head around this hand statue, and into this next room with the flying enemies. Once again, you want to generally be moving as fast as you can here because the flying enemies can bother you on this right wall here if you're not careful. Proceed down this way. If you either did not get much magnet scrap or you've already had to heal a ton, a very good early game safety is this large scrap node over here. The large scrap nodes, generally speaking, take 9 hits to fully deplete, and the small strings take 3. So here is a good safety point because you can sort of mix and match between getting a ton of scrap and getting just a little bit to top off before you continue. We're going to continue down this area and head towards the Mainframe vault. This is where all of the plot happens, but we don't have to care about the plot right now, so just continue right along this transition. These bulbs are frustratingly random. Ideally, the path you'll want to take in this room is around the left side, but sometimes you can just get absolutely body blocked by multiple bulbs. They sort of very lightly track your position. There's, I think, a radius where they do a better job of it, and otherwise they just sort of float around. Here is another safety scrap. This one is only, obviously, the 9-hit one, but you can always abandon it and just grab a little bit of scrap. We're going to continue our way down here. This room is, and the next room, are one of the more frustrating parts of the run. Something that's worth noting is that this light bulb enemy here, the sort of lava lamp looking one, I don't know, what do you call that generator? It's not important. On base game patch, which I am not currently on, the projectiles it shoots do not actually have hitboxes, so this room is way safer. On this patch, however, on Obscure Information, they actually do have to be dodged. From here, we're going to enter one of the most infamous rooms in Haiku. I call this room Bulbs Drop, because originality is dead, and I am responsible for killing it. The reason it's called Bulbs Drop is not because of any advanced tech you have to do, but because you're doing a blind drop here with 2 of the bulbs beneath you. So if you're at 1 HP here, say because you are trying to move quickly, you just have to take a leap of faith, and maybe you succeed and maybe you die. Yep. Alright, so we got hit once there. It's possible to get hit twice on your way down. If you don't feel like potentially sacrificing a run to Bulbs Drop, just heal before entering that room. Once you are here, you're going to take the first available exit and save at this save point. This is colloquially referred to as car battery bench, for reasons we'll get into in a second, and it's going to be your save point for most of the run. And now, let's talk about car battery. So if you played Haiku casually, which if you didn't play Haiku casually before starting to speedrun the game, I love you. But assuming you played Haiku casually, you may have seen this boss up here, whose name is Car Battery. Car Battery sucks, and speedrunners don't like him. The reason Car Battery sucks and speedrunners don't like him is that Car Battery is frustratingly random. Between this jumping attack and hiding on the ceiling and shooting projectiles at you, Car Battery spends a lot of time in a very bad position for you to actually damage him. He also has a grounded attack that you can respond to very quickly and do a ton of damage to. We'll see if he ever does it. Here we go. So this electric floor attack is great. But because of the frustrating amounts of RNG in the car battery fight, we're going to opt to not fight car battery at all. Now, this is probably the most advanced skip that I still recommend for beginner runners of the game. However, having investigated with a panel of new runners to the game, learning car battery skip was unanimously voted less frustrating than having to fight car battery, so I'm going to teach you the skip. Let's talk about invuln in Haiku the robot. So on my debug stats panel on the left of my screen, you will see close to the bottom the invuln 0.0 seconds. When Haiku dunks into a hazard or takes damage from an enemy, Haiku is rendered invulnerable for a little bit. That's common practice. However, with hazard dunks, Haiku gains 4 seconds of invulnerability that stack infinitely and don't go away when you die. So just as an example here, and we're back on route now, so rather than fighting car battery, once you save here, you're going to equip Infinity Edge and then come out this way. You want to be very careful not to take damage in this room, because if you do, it makes the trick much harder. And we're going to come to this little patch of fire here. This is a hazard. By dunking into it 4 times, I'm going to gain 16 seconds of invulnerability, because it will stack infinitely, less the small amount of time it takes me to walk back into the hazard every time. Okay. So now I'm dead, and I have 16 seconds of invulnerability. That invulnerability also does not decrement whenever Haiku is otherwise invulnerable. So when you're mid-dash, when you're saving, when you take damage, obviously it adds. Our goal now, with this invulnerability, is to carry it all the way through car battery arena, because while Haiku is invulnerable, he is actually off the collision layer that would spawn the boss. And unlike most bosses in the game, where the way forward is just gated and then opens up after you beat the boss, car battery, the arena doesn't close off until you spawn the boss. So by running through the arena before we are vulnerable again, we can skip having to fight car battery entirely. This does require you move quickly. If you run out of invuln, you can either just eat the time loss and frustration gain and do the fight, or you can save and quit and go attempt the skip again. So. Notice I'll be able to just walk right through that battery there. And you have to make it, so here I made it with about 2 seconds to spare. You have to make it most of the way through the arena. Let me turn my hitboxes on. Oh, you have to make it all the way through the arena. So that red box there, if I collide with it, it'll spawn car battery. So you actually have to make it all the way here, with invuln left to spare. Like I said, if you wind up spawning the fight, door will drop. I would probably recommend going for the skip again rather than doing the fight, because you don't have to learn how to deal with the fight, and the variance, even though an optimal car battery fight is actually not that much slower than the skip, the variance is huge, and anything that can buff your mental game is a good thing. Having skipped car battery, we're going to proceed through this little tunnel section. Here, regardless of what safeties you have or haven't been taking, it is very, very important that you have a non-zero amount of scrap here. So, fortunately, there is a lot of scrap right on our path. So we're going to jump through this electric hallway, not taking any additional hazard, folks. All you need is literally 1 scrap for the section that's coming up in a little bit, but if you need safeties, you have a good chunk of scrap here that's right on your path, fairly quick to get. and should keep you sustained for the long section that is coming up. Just gonna proceed through this little hallway. This gate will auto-drop behind you. That's fine, we're not coming back here anyway. We're not trying to walk back here anyway, at least. This is Pinion's Expanse. Once again, you're going to skip taking this save, and indeed, you're going to skip taking every save for this next split, because when we die, we want to go back to Car Battery Bench. Here we're going to climb up this broken elevator shaft. This room, you're going to want to move quickly because the enemies will track you. The small flying enemies will sort of drop their little babies, I guess, and those will chase you well. And on Obscure Information patch only, the steam spitters also follow you slightly. They were buffed on this patch. So just move quickly. Don't talk to Limerick, and drop to the bottom left of this room. I always personally make sure that I have heat to slide over that gap there, because it's very, very important that you do not fall down the gap to Haiku's right here, because it's not a hazard dunk. It is a secret transition to another boss. That's kind of instantly run over once you get familiar with the run. So make absolutely certain that you do not fall down there. That's one of the only ways to really have a bad time in early any percent speedruns, is adding a whole extra boss to the route. The other way to have a bad time in early Haiku speedruns, this is a clock. You need to repair this clock. It is hard required in order to proceed with the run. You need 1 scrap to repair this clock. Literally 1 scrap. The only way that you can embarrass yourself in Haiku the Robot speedrunning is if, for instance, you had 3 HP and 9 scrap right here and made the wrong call. We've all done it once. Don't let it be you. The clock is necessary. Once you repair the clock, though, we're gonna go back the way we came, once again taking care to not fall down the gap towards Mischievous, and we're gonna climb this room. Now that the clock has been repaired, these platforms will start to fall on a cycle, so you want to be careful about making sure the platform doesn't drop from underneath you. But generally, again, when you're starting out, any movement that gets you up here relatively quickly is going to be a good thing. And these elevators actually have 2 switches. There's the switch that looks like a switch on the ground, but you can also just hit the gear for the elevator. So generally with elevators, you want to hop up on top of them, just because it's faster than waiting for it to actually move here. You're going to take this secret breakable wall into this transition. And we're going to be picking up our first power cell in this room. So power cells are the in-game sort of stored currency that persists through death. With the exception of the 1 scrap for clock, every bit of money that we actually need comes from power cells in this run. So they're very important to grab, but they mean the scrap routing for any percent is actually quite reliable. Also, you want to overheat. Very important that you overheat. Well, not very important, but you want to overheat as you enter this room because, like I mentioned in the nerd section, power cells instantly refresh all of Haiku's heat. These jumping saw blades are very annoying, also random. Get through them however you are comfortable getting through them. And with that, we're into Factory Facility. You're going to proceed straight left through a number of transitions here. Fairly simple movement on the whole. Gonna grab this lever. And we're going to enter the elevator room. The elevator actually has a canonical name. This is Mundo. Yes, we've seen Infinity Edge and now Mundo. Not everyone is perfect. Mr. Morris does a lot of wonderful things for this game and community. We'll let him have 2 League of Legends references. But We're gonna pass by Mundo on floor 1 and proceed up through another leftwards transition and into the puzzle section of the run. Puzzles in scare quotes because it's very simple. We're going to head up this conveyor room. There's an interesting quirk of this run. Just in case you're uncomfortable with the movement past these enemies here, something that you can do to start out is kill this saw blade, because when you do that, for some reason, it unloads all of the enemies from this room. So if you kill the saw blade on your first pass through, it yeets the two, like, arm saw blades out of existence, making moving through this room much safer, which we're going to do a couple of times because we need to hit this lever to open that gate. Do you see it? Do you see the puzzle? And then proceed back through this room. Hit this lever, grab this second power cell, which will once again, of course, instantly unoverheat Haiku. And then from there, we're going to walk down this very long hallway. And with that, we're going to be on floor 2 of Mundo. So, this is a very long split, and the boss at the end of it, especially if you're running on obscure information, has a nasty habit of randomly ending runs sometimes. So, unfortunately, there is a save point right in front of the boss, but I really, very strongly do not recommend it, because it makes the routing way more complicated than it needs to be. We've come a long way from car battery, and we really want to go right back to car battery save. So the safety instead that I recommend is popping open this elevator. This way, on the walk back, you don't have to deal with the puzzle room again, and you can just take Mundo up a floor when you first enter factory facility. It's not as robust a safety because you do still have a long walk back if you die to the boss in a little bit, but I recommend it very strongly. Go through this conveyor hallway here. Jump past these saw blades. Over to your right here, like I said, very strongly do not recommend it, but if you absolutely feel you need it, there is this. You will have to walk back basically the way you came out of Morph Ball, so honestly, don't get this one. We're gonna hop up through these saws and into the buzzsaw fight. I'm once again gonna pop the save state here. Let's talk about patch differences. Buzzsaw is the first boss that is notably different between base game and obscure information patches. You can tell I'm on obscure information right away, and the reason for that is there's saws in the ceiling. On base game, there are no saws in the ceiling, and also the boss AI is much weaker, so on base game, you can literally just pogo this boss to death. And it, he moves around a little bit, goes up and down a little bit, but you can just pogo the boss to death. It is probably the biggest change between the patches of the game that contributes to speed for base game. However, on obscure information, the fight's a little bit more involved, and that is because if we try to do that same pogo strategy, the boss will eventually get wise to the fact that we're hiding above him, and will jump at us, and then drop a saw blade from the ceiling that homes in on Haiku's location. So it's a very strong deterrent for just trying to pogo the boss to death, which generally means that instead of this, what you're going to want to do... Let me go to full here. Generally, what you're going to want to do instead is you're going to want to be up-slashing from in front of the boss and sort of kiting him, and then hopping from side to side periodically so that you get this longer attack instead, where he bumps into the ceiling and raises the raises the floor saws at you, so you just drop, deal with that. You're gonna do that a couple times, and then he'll phase shift. Something to note, the saws that Buzzsaw spits at you actually are part of the boss's health pool. I just damaged the boss there. Why this is the case, we don't know. But it's a nice little convenient thing, especially for this next phase, where Buzzsaw is going to start with the same pattern, but a little bit faster. But then is going to have an additional bouncing attack, followed by an invuln attack. This is one of those cases where you want to be careful about killing the boss before the long attack starts, because when Buzzsaw goes into the ceiling, not only is it a very long attack, but also Buzzsaw's in the ceiling, and you can't hurt Buzzsaw. So Buzzsaw's gonna drop a ton of saw blades, and then slowly come back down. And then the cycle will repeat until Buzzsaw is dead. So I'm going to redo the fight one more time and try to get the cycle skip. A little bit. The jump attack can be a little bit persnickety to dodge because of just how big the saw blades are. And as soon as Buzzsaw starts shaking on the ground, it means that it's safe to jump on again. Nice, we got it. So again, focusing on up-slashing, kiting the boss, just really staying like very, very close to the boss. This is a tough fight, and this is also the fight with the longest run back in the game because we don't have a ton of good movement options to come back here. Absolutely, when you're starting out, focus on safety. If you have to go through one or even two invuln attacks, it is better that you survive the fight than not. And then, once Buzzsaw is dead, we get the coolest part of movement in this game. Body modifier. It's Morph Ball. It's Morph Ball. Everyone calls it Morph Ball. You were thinking of it as Morph Ball already. It's Morph Ball. I'll be calling it Morph Ball for the rest of this tutorial. Immediately, having been gifted the movement of our dreams, it's time to die once again. So now we're going back to car battery save. You're gonna morph instantly to get through this tunnel, and then as soon as you are out of the tunnel here, you're going to jump up into this saw blade 4 times in order to die. It will respawn you unmorphed and inside this tunnel, so you will need to morph again to exit the tunnel and then continue dying. And just like that, we're back to car battery save. Morphing, or like movement in ball form, is a little bit faster than walking, so now your goal is to do it everywhere. This can be one of the things that takes some getting used to, because especially it means you want to jump and then morph instantly to sort of preserve some of that momentum into the air. So again, having a control scheme that lets you alternate between dash, jump, and morph in quick succession is important. But here, I'm going to head on over to this bottom left exit. We head back up to Bulb's drop room here. Note the bulbs. And we're going to head to Quatern. Quatern is the NPC who's going to take our power cells and exchange them for 100 scrap each. It's like the only fully consistent scrap in the run and the game. Something you notice that I did there is you can jump it like sort of pops out of a chest here, and if you jump, you can catch all of it before it spreads across the ground. It's a very minor save. Also, it's just fun to hop excitedly as you're getting a ton of money. And then we're going to climb up this room all the way to the top right. And jump through this little morph tunnel. Pop the lever over. And once again, morph through here. We're going to be picking up the heat sealant ability, which is this left one, obviously. Don't accidentally pick up water sealant. You don't need it. You get this nice little cutscene where Haiku is lit on fire, but good, I guess. And then as soon as you gain control of your character again, you're gonna head over here. We're going to pop open this. And head through these tunnels along the bottom here, and into this, another puzzle. This game's not really a puzzle. No shade to this game. I'm making fun of the puzzles, but that's not what you came to this Metroidvania for. I'm gonna pop this lever open, take the top route, and then you don't need to worry about any other levers because we're going to be deathwarping out of here. This is Bulb Hive. Bulb Hive is technically, legally, a boss. However, Bulb Hive is also a joke. Bulb Hive has exactly 15 HP and is not affected by crits, so just jump and hit it 15 times. Hooray. Bulb Hive is going to drop the Bulblet, which we're going to need almost immediately. As soon as you count your 15th hit, or as soon as you see the color change on Bulb Hive, it takes a second or two for this to drop. So you can immediately start throwing yourself into this laser so that you can be at 1 HP and then go pick up the Bulblet and instantly die. And we're once again back to car battery save. This is, at a high level, arguably the hardest split of the game. We're on the blink split now. This is a lot of horizontal movement, and a lot of it is momentum-based in order to beat certain enemies or cycles. So this is where you get comfy with that morph ball button. It's also worth noting that you want to keep your HP kind of high before you die to Bulblet, before you take that Deathwarp, because any invulnerability here, you'll see that I have 13 seconds of invulnerability. Any invulnerability you have here makes the start of this movement a lot easier because you can just run straight through enemies. So I'm going to do the first couple of rooms in quick succession real quick, then I'll go back and do it with no invuln so that we can talk about sort of movement. So you're going to morph right through this room, use as much of your heat as possible because we're going to be entering a hot room where Haiku is permanently overheated. And then you can see there's text up here, and I'm just trying to clear this room as much as possible. My goal, if you die with 3 or 4 HP left on Bulblet, is you can make it all the way to the end of this room without worrying about taking damage from a single enemy. That's the dream. Sometimes, for one reason or another, we do not get the dream. So the worst part of this is honestly the fact that if you're coming through for your first time, there is a text pop-up right at the start of the room. I'm not going to get it now because it's my second time, but it makes it... Oh no, it is going to pop back up. Nice. So this text pop-up makes it very difficult to like see where you are going on these little crumbling platforms. But generally, you want to make sure that this guy does not hit you. I have choice words about him. Jump across these very small platforms, and then that segment right there with the double ovens and the flying fire spirits is far and away the worst in terms of just crowdedness. If you take a hit there, that's fine. There is an upcoming spot that is a literally free spot to heal, assuming you have scrap. Once we're in this next room, I'm going to jump across these platforms, and you're going to duck into this morph tunnel and pick up our second and final chip of the run, Gyro Accelerator. We're going to be equipping this in a little bit. It just increases your rolling speed even further, which is good, especially in circumstances like this one where you're overheated and so don't have other movement tools. Now, because I've waited here, unfortunately there is a flying fire spirit at the start of this room that follows you all the way over. Now that I've waited here, but also if you're just slow in getting over here, he's going to be right at the entrance to this tunnel, and you're going to take an unavoidable second hit. This fire spirit can also be a little bit of a body block. You want to at least swat him out of the way, or I'm going to get pulled by magnets, I guess. I had some forced horizontal momentum there. Interesting. We'll run it back. So, once again, these. Take your hit here. And so, moving quickly, jump across all of these platforms. In and back out. You don't have to be grounded to pick up items in this game, so you can just literally hop in, hop out. Gonna kill that guy for a little bit of extra scrap. As soon as the ovens touch the ground, they spit fire at you, so you can just wait cycles here. And now we're back to our infinite horizontal plane from earlier. We've made it all the way back to Abandoned Wastes. We're gonna take this elevator. This elevator is technically there from the moment you start the game, but Bulblet is required in order for this switch to be active, so unfortunately we couldn't just go right to Sunken Waste from the beginning, but also that's very fortunate because dark rooms are not my favorite thing. If, also, you hit heal as soon as you hit the switch, it's a medium tight timing, Haiku will heal as this animation is playing, making it literally free to heal even all the way up to full if you have the scrap for it. Something that is worth noting is you can see I'm not holding anything, but the animation of Haiku healing continues while he's going down the elevator, so this will drain a lot of scrap, even if you don't actually heal. Like if you're at 8 scrap, don't do this. From there, we're gonna head into Sunken Wastes. This light bulb below me is a trap. It's going to be a Fool Eater type enemy that's going to jump out from below you, but Haiku in ball form can actually sort of ride the lamp a little bit. We're going to slide through this fellow and proceed here. This is very important. This is one of the only other ways you can embarrass yourself in a Haiku speedrun. What I'm going to do with this bench, we want to keep our save point at car battery. But it is possible to equip chips without actually saving. Do not hit up here. Do not accidentally hit up here. It means you will have to walk out of Sunken Wastes, and you will be incredibly sad. But instead, if you just navigate to your menu, you can equip Gyro Accelerator right away without having to wait until you actually reach a save. We're gonna head down around to the bottom of this room. And in this next room, we're going to meet arguably my least favorite enemy in the game, these little garden shears. These garden shears have too much health for how small they are. Like, are you kidding me? They also will follow you across the entire room. So, we want to generally try not to get bodied by every single enemy in this room, but this can be a frustrating room. This room is a practice room for sure. But generally you follow that large loop around the bottom of the room and then back up to this left exit, and then we're just going to take a few more left transitions. And proceed down here. Again, making sure we use all of our heat before the pickup. And grab the Space Disruptor. It's Blink. We'll be calling it Blink from now on. The thing about Blink is that it's a teleport, right? It's a short-range teleport, and we need to use it as a short-range teleport right away. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, oh boy, a teleport, this must be broken. And you're absolutely right. The collision in Haiku and the out of bounds is actually quite robust. There's not a whole lot we can do with it, but there are two major abuses that Blink lets us pull off that the any percent route just so happens to do both of them. One of them literally right away. So we're going to head back out here on Deathwarp back to car battery save, and then immediately we're going to take the low path here. And note that I'm still invincible here. You can see I still have 8 more seconds of invulnerability, so you can just fall straight through those lasers if you're fast enough. To my right here, there is a transition that is supposed to be one way. You're supposed to take it as an exit after picking up the bomb ability. However, the transition is still there. Notice also that while I don't have control, like while this cutscene is going on, my invuln is not ticking down. So it's possible to have enough invuln from the Deathwarp after Blink to make it through all the lasers not only once, but twice on our way back out. So we blink in, pick up bomb, and then this transition, like, realizes that, oh my gosh, you picked up bomb. It's supposed to be real. We're gonna immediately use bomb. Twice on those bomb floors. So that will always overheat us, and something that's important to note here is when Haiku leaves a hot room, Haiku's heat is automatically reset to 0. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to dip into this hot room and then dip out to reset my heat back to 0 for, there's another bomb floor or two that we need to do in the next room, and rather than waiting for Haiku to unoverheat, you're going to want to pop open this bomb floor, head through the morph tunnels, pop open this bomb floor, break all these walls. These walls, for some reason, don't exist on base game patch. No one knows why they were added in on Obscure Information, but it's actually not that bad because Haiku's heat cools down slightly faster when when you're slashing at objects. So think of it as a nice little heat refresh for the Electron fight. This is Electron, our first story boss. Electron, like with everything, has 2 phases. In phase 1, Electron is going to slam, drop some tiles off the ceiling, and then do this laser attack. The laser covers full screen, as does the sweeping laser, sort of covers the ground. But generally, there's not a lot to be afraid of in this first phase. On the phase shift, there are a couple of things to note. Number 1, Electron's going to start off with a slam again. There's going to be additional projectiles on the slam. Also, in phase 2, rather than the tall laser, there's a new laser attack, and the sweeping laser comes back at you. Other than that, it's the exact same thing. Also, you want to start damaging down in the Electron fight, ideally, because at the end of this fight, we're going to want to Deathwarp again. And it's much easier to do that if you're at low HP here than high HP. So here we're going to see the sweeping laser. It's going to hit me and then come back. And now Electron's going to die. So when Electron dies, there's going to be a cutscene that's going to play that's going to sort of install the sword in Haiku. There's lore here happening. It doesn't matter. And then once the lore happens, we're going to immediately... The goal here is to throw yourself into the ceiling. It's possible, if you are slow in the Electron fight, that all of the edges of the ceiling have fallen, and so you're not able to actually take enough damage, especially if you still have more than 1 HP here. But by wall jumping up, you should be able to die and head back to car battery save very easily. If you don't have the ceiling, you'll need to go back out the way you came and find an enemy there to Deathwarp to. It's still faster than just walking back up, but ideally, you're at low enough HP on phase 2. Electron is a pretty okay fight in terms of where I've seen people reset in speedruns. So you should be able to with some practice, start damaging down in phase 2, and then throw yourself into the ceiling. With that, where it's finally time to shed the car battery save, we're going to head back up towards the mainframe vault. And we're also going to pick up one more major ability on our way. Now, something to note here. You may have lightly seen it before in just some of the other movement we were doing in, like, Blink Split, but it really matters here. These bulbs are now glowing red. When you kill Bulb Hive, every bulb in Central Core does not like that very much. They start blinking, they start moving much faster, and they start heading towards your location, which makes this segment much more frustrating than it has any right to be. That said, do not kill the aggro bulbs, because when you kill the aggro bulbs, they simply spawn 3 more aggro bulbs that are tiny and rude and awful. It takes so long to actually clear everything that don't do it. Just get out of the way. This split tests your patience sometimes. We're going to take this, so I'm going to save quick back to do the movement as one split. After dying, we're going to make our way back about halfway up Bulb's Drop Room. To this side exit, and it's time to talk about, if you've been following along, this game wears its inspirations absolutely on its sleeve. That's why we're in a Morph Ball right now. A neat thing about the Morph Ball is that much like the source material, Haiku can bomb jump. So in order to get up to this ledge, you're going to want to jump, be morphed in midair, and then press bomb. Real simple. This way we don't have to go out of our way to get double jump, which would add far, far too much time to the run. This gap, you can jump and then blink across, or you can also just do another bomb jump. And from there, we're going to pick up the string and hook, but it's grapple, and I'll be calling it grapple. So with grapple, we can grapple our way back out of the room. Blink through that enemy. And we're going to head back up, sort of the reverse of the way we came in the very early game, back towards Mainframe Vault. Every enemy on our way is going to be incredibly aggressive, so this is a good time to make sure that you have scrap left over from earlier things. There's not a lot of good scrap to grab unless you didn't grab it on your way up, and even then, because of how fast everything is moving at you, you don't have a whole lot of time to, like, sit and farm for scrap here. So generally, just doing what you can to move quickly through these rooms. If you make it here and don't have anyone chasing you, yeah, the bulbs will get stuck at the ceiling there. This room is the worst, because tight corridors and too many of them, but it should be fine. And then as soon as you're in Mainframe Vault, you can grapple all the way across and take this save. This is the last required save for the run. There is another save or two, but they are safeties. And so ideally, we park here, and we don't unpark from here until GG. From Mainframe save, we're going to grapple our way back across this room. Head up here. Bomb this bomb ceiling, I guess. And then proceed towards the last bunker. Fun fact about these lasers, you can actually hit them to recover some heat. So when you come to the start of the room, you can actually smack the laser a couple times to cool down, because heat management is going to be very important in this room. Well, the next couple of rooms. We're going to head up here, grapple across this wave, grapple across. You want to jump slightly at the start of that room, because if you just grapple, you'll collide with a tank, and colliding with tanks is bad for Haiku, but it's a very slight jump so that you don't collide with those enemies, which will also mess up your grapple. Like so. Then we get to the big room. The big room sucks. You want to be taking the top left exit out of this room is where you're going. Oftentimes, because of how useful the grapples are, you're overheated coming into the big room, and it's just a lot of stuff to deal with. Generally, what I'll recommend for when you're starting out is actually, rather than going all the way up, if you take this second left exit, like this middle left exit, there is a safe path. Actually, what I'm going to do, let me drop a save. Alright, so a couple of strategies for the big room. One thing is that you can take this left path and then loop all the way around here. It's a little bit slower, but if you're overheated walking into the room, not necessarily by much, and you can head up. This is our endpoint, this column. That's one strategy. Another strategy, if that movement is a little bit much for you, or you want to practice staying in the big room, is it's a little bit trickier. Can you make this by default? Maybe not. You can pogo up off this enemy and bomb jump your way up here instantly. That one's a lot finickier. We will find ways to make that easier as we get into some of the advanced tech, but generally any way you get up here is good. I would probably recommend going around as you're starting out, most likely because you won't have the heat to go any other way too quickly, and this movement is not so bad as long as you dodge all of the little spring-loaded traps. From there, you're going to blink through this wall. When you defeat a creator, on obscure information only, you'll notice my attack damage on my debug stats has gone up, so I'm killing base enemies faster on this patch than I would in base game runs. This means that a nice safety for obscure information is a lot of the enemies here only take one hit to kill, so you can get some nice safety scrap on your way up here, which is gonna be very useful for this next boss. But first, it's time to talk about our second and final major blink abuse. This is a lever gate. The game is hard-coded to not let you through lever gates. This is a little bit of actual regular wall above your lever gate. The game is not hard-coded to know, but this wall is supposed to be connected to a lever gate. If you overheat, it's fine. It's still way, way faster than going around this whole thing. Generally, it's easier to set yourself up so that you do it as you're falling to blink through the wall. Can I blink back? I actually don't know. Well, let me reload my save. So just some fast movement through these rooms. Like scrap off of these friends. It's possible to blink through, it's about this height, like where the gap is, where the brick layout is. I don't know how to describe that well. It's possible to do it rising. I personally find it harder rising. You can slide down the wall and then blink through there. Hit that lever. If you died in Neutron, you're gonna want that lever hit so you don't have to redo it. Something else worth mentioning. If you find yourself dying to Neutron, this is a save. You can take this. This is a safety save. Neutron is probably the hardest boss in the entire run. This is a safety that, if of all of the safety saves that I'm calling out in this entire guide, this is the one that feels actually useful. It means you will have to walk back from here at the end of the run, but the walk back is not super bad. It's only a couple of rooms. It does lose a bit of time, but if you have trouble with Neutron, this is the place to park, because then it's only a couple rooms to get back to the boss. Alright. Once you have blinked through that gate, you're going to come out here to this long hallway and grapple across it. Now, it is technically correct to grapple all the way into this transition. However, this is a basketball hoop. We are a ball. There is one ethically correct thing to do. No, but in seriousness, there is an achievement that you get for this. If you're achievement hunting, you get the 2 points achievement for dunking the robot. It comes up in every marathon run Haiku has been at, because this is on the route of every category, but it does cost a little bit of time. But really, what's a little bit of time for good speedrun ethics? Once you're through here, there is one more bomb floor to deal with, and then this enemy right here is a safety scrap so recommended that even top-level runners still get it. Because it only takes 2 or 3 hits to kill, depending on which patch you're on, and it's one of the only enemies in the game that consistently drops an amount of scrap, and that amount of scrap is 30, which is enough for 3 full heals. So, just come over here, pop this guy, and then we're gonna head out into the Neutron fight. Neutron is scary. So I'm going to show some attack patterns first. And then we'll go through the fight probably a couple times. So Neutron is always going to start by trying to slam you, sweeping across the floor. He's eventually going to sweep back, and then he'll go into one of 2 different attacks. There are 2 different heights Neutron can fly to that indicate what the tell is for the next attack. If he flies up this high, it means it's going to be a very slow, side-sweeping vertical laser, very similar to Electron's laser from Phase 1. This is a much better attack to get, because it means you can stay to the side of Neutron and just damage him like this. And then he's going to roll around the screen for a little bit. And then the attack pattern will repeat. I'm just going to shadow box Neutron here for a second. We got this long laser again. We'll shadow box him until he gives us the good RNG. Or the other RNG, I suppose. So how's everyone doing? No. Is this where I say, if you like the video, be sure to smash that like button for good Neutron RNG in all of your runs. Am I doing it? Am I doing content creation right? Wow. I would kill for this RNG in an actual run. Like nothing but long lasers? Here we go. Okay. When Neutron goes into the second height, you'll see Neutron will immediately, like, shoot missiles up, I guess is what that animation is. What that means is Neutron is going to go into the screen roll attack, but there are going to be targeted missile strikes that also hit you that you have to dodge. So it's going to look something like this. There's a decent delay between the targeting reticle appearing and the actual laser appearing. The lasers also persist for just a little bit longer than you want them to. So take care with your blinks, and also you gotta watch your heat in this, because overheating and then trying to blink through a laser is a recipe for disaster. With all of that out of the way, I'm going to actually head into the Neutron fight, show you what a phase might look like with some beginner strats, and then we'll go to phase 2. Cool, we got one of each. Excellent. Alright. Phase 2 Neutron. Phase 2 Neutron is going to start out very similarly to Phase 1, except while Neutron is doing the slam and sweep attack, there are also going to be precision bombs that are tracking Haiku's position and exploding after a short delay. Then Neutron's going to immediately go into a screen roll, and then go into the Giga Laser. You see that skull? That skull means business. The Giga Laser is the only attack in this entire game that does 2 damage at once. So more than anything, do not be grounded underneath Neutron when the Giga Laser is happening. After that, Neutron will reset, do the slam and sweep attack into a roll, but then on the next phase cycle, Neutron will just do a regular attack. So here you see we got the long laser again. So a good way to think of it is that Giga Laser is only half as frequent as other things. So I'm going to leave him at a little bit of HP here, so that he should go into Giga Laser again. And then as you can see, this is foreshadowing, Neutron's HP is at -3, but he has just started the Giga Laser attack. So we're waiting here for a second. But that's the Neutron fight. I'm going to reload the save. I'm going to play through an entire fight cleanly for you so you can see what a beginner Neutron fight looks like. Something else we're noting is the Giga Laser does have a bit of a startup. So you saw there, I went for a fair bit of damage while Neutron was setting up the Giga Laser. It's not enough, like the attack has legally started, so it's not enough to actually stop the Giga Laser from going off. But it is a good way to finish your food, so to speak. And after this bounce attack, that'll be Neutron. And Neutron's gonna once again install itself into our sword. And we're gonna take this right exit from the fight. And we're going to head back out right for 2 rooms. Once again, you want to thread the needle on this grapple. And we're back in the big room. This time, we're moving from right to left across the big room. Here you want to make sure you're at low heat, so you can bomb jump up this wall. And then head out to this side. However you get up this room is good. There are enemy pogos you can do, there are other strats you can take, but generally you want to take this middle right exit here. And then, if you used a lot of heat getting up here, you're going to want to kill this enemy, not only as a safety, but because you want your heat to be as low as possible before heading out to this next section. Because it's time for a hell run. So, as soon as I take this right transition, we're going to be on the surface of Arcadia with rain coming down, and because we did not buy the water sealant, because we couldn't afford it, Haiku's going to take environmental damage every so often. It is possible to get through these next 4 rooms only taking 1 damage. It's not that bad to get. It's fairly consistent after a little bit of practice. Basically, all you need to do is grapple instantly in the first room to avoid taking damage, grapple instantly in the second room, you'll get hit, grapple a 3rd time, and then this is the precise part. You want to jump up just a little bit to grapple through that 4th room. There I was actually a little bit slow because I was walking a little bit at the start of each room. It's possible to get through that last room without taking any damage, but that's the tightest part. It is also possible that if you jump too high, you'll bonk on the like sort of slope before the transition, and you'll fall and then take a hit before actually being able to exit. So let me go through one more time there. There I waited for too long on the start. Like so. If you get trapped out there, don't panic. Just roll through the transition. The most important thing is that you not like spam grapple, especially in the damage boost room. If you spam grapple, it's possible to start a grapple while you're already grappling. So that's a good way to just waste heat. If you have to take 2 damage tanks to get through, or even 3 from full health, that's fine. There is a really useful safety scrap in just a room or 2. So, we're gonna fall down across these platforms. And then, if you are feeling good on health, you can just grapple across this next room right away. But you can also see there is truly an ocean of scrap right here. If you're not confident in your Proton fight, I would again recommend getting this scrap rather than the safety save in the next area, because the safety save is really inconvenient for finishing up the run. But that's like casually 150-ish scrap sitting right there, so you should be able to make it through Furnace without too much trouble. From here, we're going to just head up to the top of this room and into Furnace, which once again is an overheated room. Haiku is permanently overheated, so it's just Morph Ball movement. And this is going to really test your Morph Ball movement because we got lava cycles. So, this jump in particular, you cannot make that jump without jumping from Morph Ball. You need the extra momentum in order to actually make that jump. So this is a bit of a skill check to make sure that you understand how Haiku's momentum works. It doesn't have to be much. You literally can, like, if you're uncomfortable with the inputs, you can literally just sit in Morph Ball and then just jump and hold left. But you need that momentum. And from here, we're going to go across a couple of pretty simple long hallways. Just don't stand still, because otherwise these enemies will drop fire on you. This room. This room is 2 lava cycles that are a bit painful because the lava that falls is very big and the hitbox is deceptively large. So ideally, you want to make it all the way to this wall through some quick morph jumps before you see any of this lava start to come down. That can be a little bit of a pain if, let's say, you only make it up here before the lava comes down. You have enough of a window to do a morph jump up here, which should be fine. You're going to jump around here, and then you've just got to sort of time this stuff to get between the lava cycles onto the platform and then off the platform. I will say, if you have a real rough time with Proton, here is one final theoretically available safety bench, but much like with the one before Morph Ball, I really do not recommend this. Even if you have some trouble with Proton, what I would recommend is taking the Neutron safety save instead, because 1, that way you get to practice the Hell Run on the way here and being comfortable with doing Furnace on lower HP, but also because after you do Proton, we're going to die at the end of Proton, and the walk back from Neutron, from Bunker, is much, much nicer because you're not overheated while you're doing it. So, You're gonna thread through here. And in this next room, there is a lava cycle that is impactful right at the start of the room. So ideally, you want to be morphing and morph jumping basically as soon as you clear the transition. And you should be able to just barely beat that lava cycle. If you're not confident in that, you can always wait for the first one to fall, and then it's fairly clean to get here. Then we got 3 more lava cycles. And now we're in Proton. Proton is the other boss that was drastically changed between base game and obscure information patches. Notably, also getting harder on obscure information. Notably, Proton spits fire at you much, much faster. Let me drop a save. He spits fire at you much, much faster on this patch, so the fight is a lot more intense. Generally, in Phase 1, all he's going to do is spit fire from right above your head, and then occasionally dive into the lava. The neat thing about Proton is that you don't have to jump to get up after him. So after 4 spits, you're gonna dive into the lava, and then come back, and keep spitting. Threading, like trying to change directions in between the lava spits can be very tricky. There is a little bit of a random spread between the projectiles, but it is possible to change directions. Phase 2 Proton has 3 different attacks that it can use at any point in time, in any order, and there is a frustrating amount of variance between them. The 3 basic attacks are this. Number 1, Proton can dive into the lava. Let's actually see what we get first. Alright, so first attack we get is Flame Pillars. These will always happen in multiples of 2. The tell is Proton flying towards the center of the arena and doing this like static shock thing. The pillars themselves, a random number of pillars spawns from random points in the arena. There's not necessarily going to be any amount of safety for Haiku there. If you happen to get a gap underneath Proton, you can keep up-slashing it while the flame pillars happen. But because you get a little bit of knockback with your sword, if there's just a barely wide enough for Haiku gap, like I am currently paused in, you will likely take damage while trying to do this, which can be fine. Again, we're dying at the end of this fight, so being at 1 HP is still fine, is actually, like, not so bad, but dying here is very painful, especially if you didn't take the safety. This is the second attack that Proton can do. Dives into the lava, returns to the center of the arena looking fabulously orange, and then is going to do a giant flame spit attack. Generally with this attack, I'm always going to stand below and a little bit to the left, because then you only need to worry about 2 specific lava arcs. There's one that is very short range that comes down sort of right in front of you, and there's one, this one that's sort of in the top left of my paused screen right now, that bounces off the boss door and comes back at you. And you can just pile on damage like that. So once again, you can just sort of wiggle back and forth here, and that way you only need to focus on a couple of things. This is the third attack that Proton has. It just flies diagonally down across the screen from one side to the other, spitting fire. You can either damage tank through the fire projectiles, or you can just wall jump off the side of the arena and keep pogoing him. It's worth noting that if you pogo Proton, again, this is obscure information exclusive, but the AI, much like with Buzzsaw, was changed so that you can't just pogo the boss. In Proton's case, it's not even worth to pogo the boss kind of anyway, but an additional failsafe was put in, so that if you're trying to dodge these Phase 1 attacks, he automatically goes into the dive to try and sort of shrug you off of him. And because obviously he's invulnerable while the dive is happening, not worth doing. So I'm going to go through a full Proton fight here. And generally, because you're overheated, there's like, it's just about focusing on nice two-stepping all of the attacks. And really piling on damage. And also crit RNG. This is one of those fights where crit RNG kind of matters a decent chunk. why, of course, as soon as I say that, I will get almost none of them. And the interface screen is obviously a good time to heal. Here, I know he's low on HP, so I'm just going to start damage tanking down. You'd also see there when I took damage from my sword knockback to the fire pillars, Haiku slid a little bit. Don't fall in lava while you're doing that. It would be a shame to die too early. And then we are going to here. We are going to die and return to mainframe save. So real quick, before we go to mainframe save, what I'm going to do... No, I'll show the walk back at the end. So we're at mainframe save here. You're gonna grapple across this room right away. There's a cutscene that plays where, like, the vault actually unlocks, but if you leave the room and then come back, the cutscene skips in its entirety, and we'll go into the final fight. Actually, really quickly before we do the final fight, I am going to show off the walk back from Bunker. So assuming you took the safety save before Neutron, so let's say you are not confident in your Neutron fight or your Proton fight, but you don't want to deal with the overheated walkback. You wind up here. It's basically just going to be the exact reverse of what I did to get here. You're going to head on over to the far edge of this room, grapple back the way you came. Here you want to be careful not to fall into the hazards below you, but if you do just like a full morph jump, you could land on that platform. And then voila, you're still going to do the cutscene skip. You may need to walk out a little bit to actually trigger the cutscene. I'm not totally sure on that, but you can walk out here to be safe, and then just dip in and out of the room. So the final boss. The final boss is a bit of a difficulty spike casually. Yeah, like you kind of have to make it out here. Final boss is a difficulty spike casually, but for the speedruns, it is generally considered to be way, way easier than Neutron because of this one weird trick, where for every boss in the game up till this point, they have been invincible while they were doing their interphase screen. For Virus, that's not actually the case. So if you have safety scrap here, that's fine. You can heal in the fight. Ideally, you're just going to deal with a couple of slam attacks in phase 1, and then Virus will literally do one other attack, and that's it. So I am going to park a save. Show you a full fight real quick first. So phase 1 is the phase that's important to talk about. There are two different dive attacks. In phase 1, if Virus dives at you diagonally, it's either going to scoot across the screen in a ball like this, or it's going to shoot out a tentacle at you. Let's, again, see what my RNG is. There's that tree attack, and there's this slam attack. That's all four of the attacks that Virus has that are of practical concern. There's the tentacle. Something to note about this tree attack, something that I have not really talked about before, but is important regardless of patch and is useful to know, is that tree attack, let's see if we can get it again. When Haiku uses a bomb, Haiku is invulnerable. So there, you saw that I took no damage from the tree attack. There are some other places that are more advanced where we can talk about bombs in combat that will be after the full run. But against the tree, because ordinarily it requires weaving out and then weaving back in, you can just bomb through it. It's great. I highly recommend. So you will be able to tell that Virus is phase shifting when you start to see those cracks in the shell. Virus is going to be totally vulnerable all the way throughout the screen, so I'm literally just going to stand under Virus and keep slashing. As soon as it starts phase 2, it will lead with a brand new attack that's a goop spit. You don't have to worry about it, just stay slightly diagonal and keep slashing. If you had basically no crits, it may get off one more attack in the start of phase 2. But if your crit RNG is anything okay, it will do the goop spit and then immediately scream again. Like that. Same deal here. It's possible to just finish the fight before Virus actually gets off another attack. If Virus does start an attack in phase 3, it will start with a chained dive attack that's actually quite difficult to dodge and gives you few opportunities for counter-striking. So you really want to be piling on the damage here. But I'll also show, so I'm not going to hit it here just to show you the dive attack a little bit. And then it's just all of the attacks you've seen before. But like I said, ideally you won't see anything in phase 3 at all. So this is what a full Virus fight might look like. Nice crits. Game said, we're sorry about the Neutron RNG. And as you can see there, got absolutely no attacks after the phase 2 transition. And that's Haiku the robot. So you're done as soon as you land the last hit and your sword sticks into the boss like that. However, by convention, time is not until the screen fully fades to black. That timing is about 19 seconds from the moment of your last hit, or about 8 seconds from the moment your sword impacts the floor, so you can already know whether or not you got certain minute barriers, assuming that after that entire speedrun, you are still capable of doing math. I oftentimes am not. But yeah, that's Haiku the robot in full from start to finish. What I'm going to do next is we're going to segue into a full run using only these beginner strats. I'm going to pull Live Split up and take a moment to situate myself and then do a full run on obscure information, but most things about it should either be the same or harder than base game, so this should be usable there as well. We'll do a full run, and then after that full run, I will take some time to talk about advanced speed tech and other strats you might start implementing into your run. Hello again, and welcome to the second half of the Haiku Any % tutorial, where I'll be doing a full run with beginner strats throughout the run and talking a little bit in sort of abridged commentary as we go through. You see I've got Live Split up. If you want help with getting set up on Live Split, including the load removal and auto splitter, I highly encourage you to join the Haiku Discord. But I'm also still in debug mode from the tutorial, so the beginning of this is going to look a little bit funky. For actually submitting to Speedrun Leaderboards, obviously, you are not allowed to have any mods installed. You'll need to reset to a vanilla modding API. But just for purposes of our tutorializing today, we're going to leave it like that. And so without further ado, let's get into it. So right away, Gonna be taking our initial Deathwarp. Slide jump off in the Coyote frames to get the first key. And we're going to take advantage of the cutscene here to lower my heat a little bit. Generally, the difference in expectation between this run is I have spent a lot of time playing this game already, so I have a decent sense of like how to economically use my heat. But generally, as long as you are taking strides to be overheated for as much as possible of the run as is safe to do so, that's kind of where you want to be. You're in a bad spot. Okay. So phase shift magnet as fast as possible there, so that he's on the left side. And when you phase shift magnet on the left side like that, I know that he will always start with the triple slam, so I can just be ready to react, and we should be able to kill him, yeah, before even the magnet attack. And from electromagnet, we are going to go ahead and take our Deathwarp. Ideally, this little flying camera should die and give me a little bit more scrap. Yeah, 10 there is actually very generous. Grab our Infinity Edge. From here, I'm trying to conserve heat just because I know that these enemies are a bit of a pain. Because it can be a little bit tricky to jump out of their shock radius. Rude bulbs, as is custom. Yeah, okay, one there is fine, and the lower bulb is in a good position, so for bulbs drop, even if I were to somehow take 2, it would not be run ending, but we get lucky. It doesn't matter whether you equip first or save first, but I like equipping first, I just have muscle memory for that. So here we die 4 times, or tank 4 times to get 16 seconds of invuln. And that's car battery skip. Gotta move fast, but now we're through. And I have enough scrap for the clock, but I'm going to take a little bit to get 1 or 2 extra heals in, if need be, on the long split here. Because it will be a while before we see a save. Sometimes we have bad coyote frames there. That's okay, that's what the extra health is for. It is a little bit unfortunate to be at exactly 18 before the clock. But what are you gonna do about it, I guess? Yup. Saw blades are gonna saw blade. I'll take my safety heal here while I'm overheated, because healing while overheated, better for your movement overall. Kill that saw blade, both for some safety scrap and also to deload the rest of the room here. Pop open the elevator as a safety. And with that, we'll be in Buzzsaw. Gonna heal at the start. Definitely phase after this. We got pretty good crits there too. And with that long attack, we should be able to skip the invuln. Yep. Go say hi to Quatern, huh? Honestly, kind of amazed we made it through all that without taking damage, but I'm not gonna complain. And with a full, like, 4 HP before the Bulblet Deathwarp, we should be able to invuln our way through the scariest part of this room. Sometimes you just walk directly into fire. It's good for robots, I swear. And the 25 scrap there gathered from the fire enemies is so that if I needed to, could heal all the way down this elevator. Wound up having a pretty clean incinerator split there. We love it when all the garden enemies actually behave. Just taking advantage of our iframes there to fall through the lasers. This was fast enough that we should be able to fall right through on the second half as well. Start damage tanking down in phase 2. Something worth noting that I don't think came up is don't start to heal before entering this cutscene, because otherwise you'll heal all the way through the cutscene, and it would be super unfortunate to heal back up to full right before you went to Deathwarp. I was a little greedy on that blink there. It's fine. No one has ever been badly hurt by aggro bulbs before. Not even once. Alright, now the fun part. I think I'd rather wait here so that I can do 2 grapples. Just because the movement here, with if you're overheated, often involves getting hurt by tanks. So I'm going to go through this safe route. I'm not going to take the safety save here, but this will get me a lot of extra scrap for the Neutron fight. Obviously, we dumped the robot. Obviously. Alright, nice. We got an attack and a half there. Kind of bad bomb luck there, but it should be fine. Maybe that'll be enough. We'll see if he does another attack after the Giga Laser. Alright, pretty clean Neutron. Love leaving here at 4 HP, that's for sure. Incredibly rude. Alright, we'll do the bomb jump. Something to note here is in a case like this, where I'm a little bit high on heat, there aren't actually enemies in this room that we can fight in order to cool us down a little bit faster. They are a little bit chaotic, so you gotta be careful not to take damage while trying to cool down, thus defeating the purpose, but... I'm feeling good enough on scrap that even though 2 HP is not my favorite, I'm not going to take that safety scrap down there. Hopefully, should be able to make it through Furnace on 2 fine, and then it can heal up in the start of the Proton fight, where it doesn't actually cost any time. Nice. We'll go to 4 here, just in case RNG. Just in case RNG is rude. Proton has enough HP that I don't like to start damage tanking until after you've seen an attack or two. Especially because of this attack, which can be very rude. Alright, you're telling me a 24 is possible? Maybe not. We'll have to see. Be a low 25. Or maybe we'll get 0 crits. Yeah, alright. I knew I shouldn't have opened my mouth. That's Haiku sometimes. So yeah, hopefully that was a good mix of some amount of safety, some amount of live single take adjusting for gameplay, while still generally being a very overall clean speedrun that that covered most of the parts, most of the things that we talked about in the guide earlier. Like I said at the beginning, this guide made no assumptions about your goal time, your prior speedrunning experience, and where you go next is entirely up to you. If you came to this guide just looking to sort of dip your toe into speedrunning, I'm incredibly honored that Haiku the Robot was the game you chose to do it with. If you complete your first run and decide the game isn't for you, no shame in that. I have about 875 other games I can recommend to you, and I hope we see each other again. If you decide you want to do it again, I have a few closing thoughts generally before segueing to advanced speedtech. Speedrunning is a time investment first and a skill expression second, in my opinion. There are ways to make the time you put into speedrunning work more efficiently for you. Spoiler alert, it's practice. But also balance that against your own free time and your own enjoyment. And at the end of the day, any time you spend getting comfortable with the video game you run will only be to your benefit, and you can customize your goals around that desire. Literally, the only person competing with you in speedrunning is your past self, and honestly, forget about that, nerd. A lot of speedrunning generally is asking why, both of others. Why does this route work like this? Why is this boss here instead of later? And of yourself. Why did my attempts to this trick not work? Why am I consistently losing time to my PB in this split? Stay curious and let that curiosity inform how you spend your time speedrunning. That also, for me personally, keeps it kinda light and fun. From here, we're going to segue into looking to some more specific speed tech that can help you continue to save seconds and minutes off your final time. We're going to be moving sort of generally in order from things that I think are the easiest to achieve, the easiest to implement into runs, to things that are harder to implement into runs. So rather than moving in chronological order, this should hopefully be continuing that sort of on-ramp. So, with that in mind, I'm gonna pop open a new file. We'll go ahead and close Live Split. And let's talk about some speed tech, shall we? So, right off the bat, the bit of speed tech that I think is easiest to implement from the run I just did, if you're looking for a faster time, Electron? That's Electron, nice. That was almost sufficiently easy that I included it in the beginner guide, but there are a couple of pitfalls with it and a couple of things to look out for, so I put it here instead, and that's creator deathwarps. In the beginner guide, I deathwarped after the full creator cutscene had played out and the creator installed itself in our sword. For 2 of the 3 creators, that's actually not necessary. So for instance, with Electron here, I'm gonna really quickly run back through the Electron fight. As we get a very interesting debug music glitch, it seems like. I can still hear the opening. So, with creators, as soon as the text boxes appear for the creators, they are legally considered defeated, which means that it is possible to throw yourself into hazards, the ceiling in this case, and fire when it comes to Proton, such that you die after the text box pops up, and you will still count as having defeated the creator. So there is a timing, there's a visual cue to do this. You want to die as soon as you see the black tendrils pop out of the boss, like that, and as long as you die as long as your health hits 0 before the text box actually pops up, you're still legally considered having beaten the boss. Something else to note, you can see here, I am stuck in the install cutscene a little bit, because the game expects me to be getting installed there, but Electron's not actually doing it. That can happen on both Electron and Proton. All you need to do in that case is just save quit, and then reload your save. and that works with both Electron and Proton. It saves 15 seconds or something close to it, an absurd amount of time with each boss, as long as you're not dying too early, because if you die too early, you do have to redo the boss fight in its entirety, which is a little bit slow. That's the easiest thing. Moving on from there, there are one or two other just sort of general mechanical things that you don't usually have to concern yourself with in your first runs, but are very good to sort of know in terms of as you start to learn room movement and develop your sensibilities there. There are two of those things. We'll talk about both of them in this little hallway. The first is damage boost slides. If you take a contact hit from an enemy and slide as you're in the, like, flinching animation, you slide twice as far. You're actually not in a great spot for this, are you? So here is the length of a normal slide, and there is the length of a damage boost slide. It's very slight, so even if there are some bleeding edge optimal movement strats where you damage tank down to 1 HP just by walking through rooms, not something that you necessarily need to implement right away, but a little bit of free time save that comes up in multiple splits throughout the run. The other sort of basic mechanical thing I want to talk about is corner boosting. If you roll over a corner while you're in your morph ball, Haiku gets popped up. This is technically true for not unmorphed Haiku, but because Haiku has these wacky little things called legs, it's less noticeable, it's less pronounced. You really only see it if you're, like, just barely gonna make it up onto a corner. But there are all sorts of moments where running over corners is going to give you a lot of, like, free vertical, free movement speed. So for instance here, you'll see me corner boost up by just jumping and then morphing right away to get up that gap without having to, like, jump out here and then jump in onto the next ledge. Again, it comes up a lot. It comes up a fair bit in Blink Split, the long room. Let's see, we got before the Heat Gauntlet. Yeah, okay. So, actually here, right, something I like to do here, for instance, is corner boost up that corner, where if I'm invulnerable, I'll just go flying through all of the enemies. Similarly, you can corner boost here to gain some momentum. Like Blink Split in particular is where if you look at top runs of the game, you'll see a whole ton of corner boost movement. Not going to go over every specific room that it is useful in, that is beyond the scope of this guide, but just to get a feel for it and to know that generally, when you are in Morph Ball, to be running over corners where possible, because it can get you a lot of extra stuff. I'm going to carry on down to the garden room, because I think it's probably the best showcase of that. Alright, so you're down here. That's a huge time save. Generally, going up here in Morph Ball is a huge time save. There is one other thing to note about corner boosting, though, and that's later in the run, your physics can actually change when it comes to corner boosting. I'm going to reset this room so that I'm not dealing with the garden shears. Your physics can actually change with regards to corner boosting. In your default state, you get this huge momentum boost. However, because of some Unity jank with this game, I'm gonna give myself blink here. When you blink, it changes Haiku's physics refresh rate, so you lose access to powerful corner boosting until you get hit or take a save. So there are a couple of corner boosts that you may be wondering, well, I'm not going through that. Chances are you used blink defensively to get through an enemy and haven't been hit since. It's just a bizarre physics quirk of the game, but it's something you have to contend with. From here, we can move on to the actual, like, real capital S speed tech. And we're gonna start, in fact, all the way back at the beginning of the run here. So, I'm gonna pick up my heal, pick up my key, pick up my heal, and let's talk about slides in this game. There are two different ways that you can interrupt a game action with Haiku's healing in such a way that momentum will carry from the heal, and you'll be just sort of sliding along the ground. The first one of these is called a heal slide, and you sword swing into a wall and then immediately press heal. You see, the heal animation comes up, and Haiku slides along the ground. The actual sliding is a little bit faster than walking, but you do have to factor in the time it takes to actually, like, turn around and hit a wall with your sword. So a general rule of thumb is that if the ground is long enough for Haiku to get 2 wrench cranks in, it's definitely faster. That gives you a little bit of leeway. There are some things that aren't quite that long that are still optimal, but generally, that's what it means. You have to press it fairly quickly after you input the sword swing, but you don't have to be holding any direction. Like, you can just hold, in my case, A, and you'll heal slide off any given wall. You can also heal slide off of basically any game object. For instance, this doesn't come up in the route, but you can heal slide off of the scrap deposits. You can heal slide off of enemies. There's one moment in Morph Ball Split where the levers in the puzzle room, you can heal slide off of those. And so generally, before you get fancier movement options, it is slower than rolling, so it's only used at the beginning of the game generally, but it does speed up the early game considerably. The second form of this heal slide is called a blink slide. You're just in the dark here. And I may have accidentally done it in my example run, but just a Deathwarp out here real quick. Blink slide is basically the same idea, except instead of slashing at a wall, you're just going to blink along the ground, and then while Haiku is invisible, you're going to press heal there, and it goes much, much faster than a regular heal slide. You can carry that all the way through the transition. Because we get grapple in this run, because grapple is useful for, like, you can use grapple in midair, there are very, very few blink slides, but notably, right after you get blink, it's a ton of free time save, like a second or two of free time save, to just blink slide back the way you came. Next up, we have probably the creme de la creme of silly Haiku speed tech, and that is the buffered landing jump, or BLJ. Yes, we named it that on purpose. Yes, there is basically no overlap between Haiku runners and Super Mario 64 runners. Yes, I still find it tremendously funny. The way the BLJ works is very early in the guide, I mentioned that this game has incredibly generous coyote frames that don't particularly care how you actually leave the platform. That includes if you leave the platform via a jump. So the way a buffered landing jump works is you're going to double tap jump essentially as you land on the ground. So this is my regular jump. You can see the little, like, dust animation happening underneath Haiku's feet. If I double tap jump as I am landing, you can see I got that same double tap, or that same scuff animation from a decent ways higher up. The timing is a little bit finicky, but it's something that you can get consistent pretty quickly. And also, it's worth noting, the more you delay your second jump press, the higher Haiku will be when you do the actual BLJ, and so the more height you will get. At top level, there are certain jumps that can only be made with max or near max height BLJs, but there's one particular use case of BLJs that is probably the first thing you should pick up, and that would be car battery skip. So in the beginner guide, for car battery skip, the way you do car battery skip is you head over to this patch of fire, and you dunk into it 4 times. That takes a second to get to, and we can actually do better. There is another faster way to die here. Let me just get rid of my blink real quick. There is a faster way to die here, and that's down underneath. We can go into the laser room, where we are here. The problem is, the lasers are not considered hazards, so I'm going to pull up my debug stats here. When I damage tank on the lasers, it's only going to give me 1.5 seconds of invulnerability instead of the full 4 seconds. So by doing this death, I'll only get 12 to 13 seconds of invulnerability instead of the full 16. Oh, I broke this floor. 1 sec. Let me get a better save here. Alright, so I was invulnerable for a moment here, but I'm going to damage tank on a laser and then do 3 damage tanks into this. 1, 2, and with that we should be dead. And you'll notice I only have about 12.5 seconds of invuln here. So if I do car battery skip without the BLJ, I'm going to run out of time right at the very end. It is theoretically possible to get car battery skip without a BLJ from there. There are some other things you can do to make it faster. For instance, we can take advantage of our swanky new heel slide tech to go this way across the arena, which does save a fraction of a second. But ultimately, if you're gonna get good at BLJs, this is the place to do them, because what we can do is we can take a much, much faster route to get through car battery skip that lets you skip it with this setup. So I'm gonna do the same stuff as before, die here, except instead, I'm going to BLJ right here. Even a min-height BLJ gets it, and then BLJ again right here. And with that, you can see I've got 2 whole seconds to spare, even on the shorter time. As you're getting used to that, you may want to take the safer damage tank and then practice BLJs, because that way if you mess up the BLJ, you still theoretically have enough time to redo the skip. But if you learn BLJs in one spot, car battery skip is definitely the place that I recommend you do it in. There is another good use case for BLJs. I'm gonna get into my completed file here. We're gonna head back up to Bunker real quick, because the walls in Bunker are just absolutely perfect for this. In the sample run and the guide, I talked about doing like bomb jumps or pogoing enemies. We don't need any of that. It's actually much, much nicer to get around the sides of the walls in Bunker here, because all of these wall sides are just a BLJ away. So for instance, on the walk back to Proton, I can just BLJ up this gap and then go from there to finish out the Proton movement. There are a ton more applications of BLJs sprinkled throughout the run. Once you get into the room-by-room stuff, I can only recommend that you watch high-level VODs for strats. But generally, as long as you get the double tapping down on the ground, those are the places where even like the most minimum height BLJ is still going to get you where you need to go. For this next trick, I'm gonna do a quick bit of setup. We got Morph Ball anyway. Okay, cool. So the next trick is a very specific trick. It saves about 10 to 15 seconds, probably not quite that much. It saves 8 to 10 seconds, and it's Sealant Early Control. So this is after you have gotten Morph Ball, and after you have returned to pick up the stuff from Quaturn. Basically, there is a way to roll yourself off the dais that you get the sealant ability from and interrupt the animation that actually gives you heat sealant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll through this gap, I'm going to stay holding right and interact with the heat sealant prompt as high as I am able to, and then keep holding right. If I do it correctly, Haiku should, in Morph Ball form, bounce off the corner of the dais and continue rolling right, where you'll be able to interact with the water sealant prompt. And then you can cancel the water sealant prompt and leave the room without having to sit through the entire animation. It's a very specific trick. For a while, top runs didn't get it. We've since gone to a place where it is now necessary for top times, but all it is holding right, essentially, in Morph Ball. So you gotta be comfortable with Morph Ball immediately out of other game actions, but with that out of the way, it's a fairly simple time save. The last bit of advanced tech I want to talk about is going to be the Giga Laser. There are two things to talk about when it comes to the Giga Laser. The first is pogoing the Giga Laser. So I'm going to get to phase 2 of Neutron real quick here. The Giga Laser takes 10 to 15 seconds. You are never happy to see it in a speedrun, and especially when you're starting out, the fact that the Giga Laser is incredibly threatening does ruin some runs. Like I said, Neutron is widely considered to be the hardest boss in the run. So there are a couple of things to make the fight a little bit easier. Alright, let's get to Giga Laser here. So right now, Neutron's still got a decent amount of HP, and Giga Laser's about to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get up on the wall, and after he starts the attack, Pogo. Blink and Pogo. If you blink fully inside the column of the laser hitbox, you are not going to get hurt by anything. There, I left him with so much HP that he's still got another attack off, but that's fine. By blinking inside of the column, you can completely pogo with impunity. The problem is, if you hit the edge of the column, then you're going to take damage, and also the ceiling there is a little bit lower than I think we want it to be as runners, so it's possible to accidentally, like, recoil from the ceiling and hit Neutron's body, which will inflict damage. These are still better than taking damage to the Giga Laser itself, but as you get comfortable with the fight, if you're still winding up getting Giga Lasers, you can blink inside the hitbox and just finish off the boss that way. The most advanced patch-agnostic piece of tech for this, however, is Giga Laser Skip. Giga Laser Skip essentially requires absolutely never letting up on damage against Neutron. It's not something I recommend for beginner or even necessarily intermediate runners. You can absolutely get great leaderboard times without it. However, we're going to take advantage of a couple of things here. Number one, you can blink across the arena to sort of follow Neutron where he goes. Number two, you can use the walls of the arena to get hits on Neutron while it's starting, like, the beginning of attack cycles. And number three, that is actually patch exclusive, not only does Bomb give you iframes, but on Obscure Information, Bomb actually deals damage to enemies. Let me be a little bit more specific there. Bomb deals damage to enemies regardless of your patch. However, on base game, enemies also have iframes, and the amount of iframes that enemies get are the exact amount that it takes to space out 2 sword swings. So you cannot go sword, bomb, sword. In Obscure Information, however, you can interweave sword swings and bombs and deal damage. And we are joined by a special guest for this Giga Laser skip. This is my son. His name is Kuiper. When you bomb Neutron while it's rolling across the screen, you can actually alter the trajectory of its bomb bounces. And that can screw up the fight a little bit if it bounces much faster than we want him to. I will also say it is much easier if you get this attack in the first phase than the faster attack, but ultimately you can do it with either. And that's Giga Laser Skip. Highly advanced. Some top runs are gonna miss it, and it's going to hurt, but that is your ultimate end goal for the Neutron fight. On Obscure Information, there are plenty more opportunities to use Bomb in the middle of combat. Notably, you can spam it throughout the virus fight. You can also use it on the Electron fight. That's one of the reasons why it's so nice that we are required to get bombs before doing any of the creators. Obviously, Proton, that's just going to be a slugfest because you're overheated and can't bomb. But that is effectively all of the tech outside of, like, very specific room movement things that is in Haiku runs. Really, it's just a lot of taking simple mechanics and exploiting them to the max. So with that, I wish you a tremendous amount of luck in any and all future Haiku speedruns you do. I'm also a leaderboard moderator for speedrun.com, and more than anything, I hope to see you around speedrunning. Thanks!